It is time to bake bread. Maybe you have done this for years. Maybe it's the first time. You don't really know what to do, where to start. Amy Brace is the expert here. She has some tips on making sourdough.
Yep.
You own a cupcake shop here in Minnesota. But
Amy's Cupcake Shop.
Yes, in Hopkins,
Yep.
if you're local. But you also just started a book, an ebook about sourdough and kind of getting that starter, then going from starter to the next stage. This was very popular during the pandemic. A lot of people got into it. And I think this time of year, people think about, I want to bake my own bread.
Right.
But it's daunting. It's a little,
It is.
It's a little intimidating.
Right.
Why do you think that we're so scared to start?
Because everyone says it's hard.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of like multiplies that out as like, well, it's really hard and you have to do this and you have to feed it and you have to whatever. But if you feed your starter, you can leave it in the fridge for a week.
So you're telling me it's not hard?
It's not hard. No, it is not hard. And in my ebook, I have videos and pictures and links to things, which I didn't really know what an ebook was, but now I do. So.
But you said that was helpful for you when you were doing this and making your own bread to see video. This is what it looks like. This is what the texture should be when you touch it, as opposed to just reading a traditional cookbook.
Exactly, because you look at something and they'll be like, well, this means it's overproofed. I'm going, I don't know what that looks like, and I'm a very visual learner. So going from something like this to something like this in 45 minutes just like blew my mind. And like how it looks and how the dough feels and how it wiggles.
Because you're probably looking at this if you've never done this before and you're like, there's no way that's
going to make bread.
Like exactly. I don't know what that is, but that's not going to be good. Okay, let's start with the starter. What do you need to start it?
Just flour and water. So the best flour when you're starting is a whole wheat flour.
Okay.
Or like a rye or something like that. And it has wild yeast on it and then just regular water.
And each day, what should you be doing?
So each day for the first 3 days, you just add a little flour and water to it, and you mix it up. And then on day 4, you start using bread flour. And then you solely use bread flour from that point out, unless you want a whole wheat starter, which I also have, because why not?
And at what point can you get to this point?
So
to actually start making dough to make bread?
Once your starter floats in water.
Okay, that's their indicator.
That's the indicator, yep. It should be bubbly and happy, and then it will float in water, actually.
Okay, and how many loaves will you get out of your starter?
It depends on how you feed it.
Okay.
So I keep what's called a micro starter, which is in a jar about this size. Because every time you're feeding your starter, you're getting a little bit of discard. Whereas if you keep a big starter, you're getting a lot of discard, which I just feel is a waste. So I keep it smaller. But when you feed it up to make a loaf of bread, you only need about 15 grams.
Okay, so if you don't have something like this, you could use a mason jar.
Totally,
or something like that.
That's what I started with, and then these are actually for sale with my on my Etsy shop. So
okay, so you get it here, and then from this stage, what do you do?
From this stage, so you always want to wet your hands when you're working with sourdough, otherwise you'll just be a big sticky mess. So this is called stretch and folding. So you just kind of stretch the dough and fold it over.
Can you overwork it?
No. The dough will get really tight, and so that's kind of when you know when to stop.
Okay.
But you kind of go like this. You can wiggle it around, and you can see already how much different the dough looks.
Yeah.
Just by touching it a little bit. Yep. I mean, you still get messy, but
sure. From
it
there,
is what it is.
From there, this is a power of love, right?
Yep.
Then from here, what do you do?
So from here, then you wait about a half an hour, and then it should start to look like that.
And then you're ready to bake, or what?
And then you have to do that 3 more times.
Okay.
And then you do what's called a pre-shape, and then you do a final shape, and then you put it into a proofing basket.
Like this, or something like that?
Yep.
Okay.
Something similar. So these ones I got from Amazon when I was first starting. And then the 2 in front are from a company called Rose Hill Sourdough. And those, I just love how the loaves come out from there.
Sure.
And I use the bread cover.
Okay, so you put this on top of it.
Yep, so you put that on top. And then when you go to bake, you use the bread mat, and then it goes into a cloche, a bread cloche. But the dough sits overnight, so you only have to handle it for 5 or 6 hours.
Sure. And then
but every half an hour. Yeah, and then voila. You get
how long do you bake it for? I mean, I guess it depends a little bit, but
no. So this one is 45 minutes. You bake it covered for half an hour, and then you take the cover off, and then you bake it for another 15 minutes.
Any tips on keeping, you know, okay, let's say you live alone and you have 2 people in the family. How do you keep that sourdough fresh beyond, you know, the first day?
So I just always know that I'm going to feed it in the morning and then feed it at night.
Okay.
And so when I wake up in the morning, I bring my daughter to the bus stop, and then I'll feed the starter.
You take care of your kid, and you take care of your starter.
Yes, my kid and then my starter kid.
treat it like a baby.
Yes, exactly.
Biggest mistake that people make when making bread, whether it be sourdough or really any bread?
Is not letting it proof enough, I would say.
Okay.
But you end up with a little bit tighter of a loaf, but it'll still taste good.
Sure.
I've made literally bread soup before that looked like this, and it still tastes fine.
Might not look pretty.
It's just like, when you make your first loaf, be patient with yourself, be gentle with yourself. It's not going to be perfect the first time around. The first loaf I made looked like a hockey puck, but it was still delicious, and we made croutons out of it. So it's like there's always something positive that you can take from each one, and you're learning with each one. So you're learning, like this one, it has a nice crust on the bottom. It's got little pockets in the holes, and the rest of the crumb is nice and even. So that's kind of what you're looking for crumb-wise. And
it's oddly satisfying and very, you feel so proud of yourself.
Right.
We did, my husband and I did this a lot during the pandemic, and kind of you're inspiring me to get back to it.
Yeah.
Because it is. You're like, I did this. The house smells great.
Yeah.
And it is. It's not that hard. Amy, if people want to learn more about the ebook, where do they find it?
They can find me on Instagram at Shady Oak Sourdough, and I have a link to my Etsy page from there.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Get to baking.
Bake it.